Alright. Make sure it's recording. So, I've been thinking about some things because social media has just become a place where feelings are just in abundance. And people feel off their, or I should say, people's emotions are based off their feelings and not off of actual facts and proof. And outliers are taken as everyday truths when it's a rare thing. And what do I mean by that? Well, they'll take a situation that, let's say, happens in some remote area where there's like 1%, 2% black people, and they'll take a situation that racially happened where it's white on black and blow it way out of proportion and make it seem like this is something that's prevalent all throughout the country. Now, I'm not here to say that there isn't an element or form of racism or whatever you want to call it, white supremacy. I'm not saying that those elements don't exist. What I am saying is they don't exist at the levels of which is being pushed and propagandized. And I say that because I was thinking about what my grandmother went through and what her father went through, which would be my maternal great-grandfather and grandparents, period. They were sharecroppers. And I remember so many, she told me a couple stories about things that happened. I even remember one time when I was very little, and we were in South Carolina, and we went. We went to this town. It was like literally a town out of a western, because it was all dirt. It was a dirt road, and it had stores and everything. I don't remember exactly the city or the wherever we were at, but I do remember we were in South Carolina, and we went to go get one of our relatives some shoes because she had bad feet. And I remember distinctly, no one would come to help us. No one would come, and this was late 80s, approximately. So it wasn't like it was, 50, 60 years ago. So that's what I'm saying. It's not as if I'm saying racism doesn't exist. I'm saying in the modern day, 2018, it does not exist in the forms of which I experienced it, or in the forms of which my grandmother experienced it and my great-grandfather experienced it. The situation that happened with my great-grandfather, he was a sharecropper, and he had what they would call back then a prize mule. Well, there were some other white sharecroppers who admired this prize mule and demanded that my great-grandfather sell it to him, sell it to them. He said, of course, well, no, if I sell it to you, how can I sharecrop? This is, So, needless to say, they slaughtered his prize mule and put it on his front doorstep. Now, I would beg anyone to ask or to tell me, and I want to ask the question, do you think racism or any type of whatever you would want to call that exists currently in that kind of form? Because you have to understand what racism is. It is the oppression of one to work, make a living, just live, based on the concepts of the color of their skin. Now, would they have killed a white man's prize mule if they wanted it? Could be, could not. Who knows? So even that situation within itself, you would have to say, well, would it have happened to a white sharecropper? Probably not. Not back in those days, I don't think so, but you can't say definitively that it wouldn't have happened. Out of jealousy, hatred, envy, whatever you want to call it. Now, I'm not here to defend or not defend any actions that happens against blacks from whites. What I am saying is we really need to be careful about labeling everything racist, because at some point any and everything that you do becomes racist. Now, the other problem with this whole argument that if something happens to a black person from a white person that is automatically racist is, what happens when a black person does it to a white person? Is that racist? I've heard many people say, and even some intellectuals say, black people can't be racist. Black people don't own nothing to be racist. We can't deprive white people of anything. Well, actually you can. You can deprive white people of being able to live in comfort. You can deprive white people from being able to go to their jobs or drive through your neighborhood, you can inconvenience them. Isn't racism the same? Isn't racism from white people the same thing? It's to inconvenience a black person from being able to live, work, play, sleep, eat, whatever. Is that not the same principle? My issue with a lot of these overly sensitive people is that you sit up here and you complain about how everything that white people do to black people is racist. But you say absolutely nothing, almost as to say, well, they deserve it, when black people do something to white people or any other group. It's never considered racist. A black person can sit up there and call white people crackers all day, and it's not considered racism. It's not considered bigotry. It's not considered anything. But if a white person just calls the police on somebody, they're racist. I don't understand how this logic works. That's where I really have the issue. I have the issue more so of that it's not fair. You want to sit up here and complain about how things aren't fair about your plight, but you don't even consider or even stop to think about all of the reverse issues that happen when black people are the perpetrator. At the end of the day, as a group, we commit over 50% of crimes in the United States. Yet we are the smallest representation of all the populations. So how is it that the smallest populations are committing the most crimes, but there's always an excuse on why we commit the most crimes? Well, it's the prison industrial complex. It's this, it's that, it's the educational system, school to prison pipeline. Okay, so what are we doing about this? If those are the essential reasons on why blacks lead statistically in the crime category of all crimes committed, what are we actually doing about this so that we no longer lead this statistic in crimes committed? Or is it the fact that it's maybe not that, and maybe it's the fact that there's no fathers in the homes? Could that be the problem? There's no disciplined male masculine figure, just a bunch of simps that go around trying to defend the horrors that bring these babies into the world and don't really take consideration of what it really means to be a parent and what it really means to be a mom, what it really means to find a proper father to have a child with. That's really not my argument, but that's something that maybe should need to be considered, as if those stats are, as I've been told, white man stats, and it's just made they're just put out there to make black people look bad. Well then, why are we not doing anything to change the narrative? Why are we continuously having children out of wedlock, creating the environments of which these crime-filled neighborhoods are filled up with children with no guidance, because there is no male figure to give guidance? And if there is a male figure, that male figure was probably raised in the same conditions, so all of what he sees is pretty much normal to him. Very few people like me, and I'm not tooting my horn up for nothing, But very few people like me who grew up without a father. Well, I knew my father, but he wanted nothing to do with me. So I essentially really only had, I think, one boyfriend that my mom dated who, honestly, we butted heads, but looking back on it, he genuinely gave a damn about me. But not very few grow up in my environment and don't repeat the cycle. And trust me, I came very close to repeating the cycle of bringing into the world bastard children. Very close. So I'm not trying to put down anybody. What I'm saying is, at what point are we going to start taking accountability for the dumb shit that we do that puts us in this situation? Now, let me tell you something. I live in a rural area now. And I drive through the south part of Albany, which is basically the hood. And I tell you, I see a lot more nicer vehicles parked on the street in front of housing complexes than I see in the neighborhood in which I live in, which people actually have driveways. And I don't see nearly half the luxury vehicles that I see when I drive through the hood. Maybe it's the accountability or lack thereof. It's maybe it's not white supremacy, but it's idiocy. It's black idiocy. Why would you buy a luxury or an expensive vehicle when you live in a housing complex? Your priorities are screwed up. I myself only drive a Ford. My wife drives a Kia Sorento. But our house is nicer than our vehicles. I don't know. Honestly, I don't think the black race can be fixed. I don't think the black race can be repaired. Just based on the fact of, I still have people who won't address the issues I bring up in videos, but want to just sit there and call me names and talk shit. So, until we get rid of those people, and until genuine black people, whatever you want to call yourself, start to really come together and say, look, this is some bullshit, we got to do better. What I'm saying is just a time killer. Because no one takes what I say seriously. No one takes anything that's critical of black people that could make us independent people without depending on the white supremacist system. It's scoffed at. I'll say this in the video. I did a video a long time ago, and it was the Jesse Lee Peterson versus Jane Elliott video. And I had this dumb bitch come on the video, talk about I need to do my research and Jim Crow and all this other shit, blah, 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 blah. And I said to her, we went back and forth. If you go there, you'll probably see the comments. And one of my last comments to her, before she responded back, talk about 200 views, 6 likes. That should say a lot. Well, when YouTube fucks with your platform and blocks things, you only get 200 views. Because, as I said before, my page was on its way to becoming fairly relevant. I was getting close to 400, 500 views a video, and some of my videos were getting up in the upper hundreds of views. And then all of a sudden, people started flagging my shit, YouTube was flagging it, and it went down. But I said to her, you talk about Jim Crow and how Jim Crow just recently went away. I said, what does that say about you, that you would just sit there and accept this? You did nothing. You talked more shit to me in the comment section than you talked to those politicians that was upholding Jim Crow. And that response that I just mentioned, 600 or 200 views and 6 likes should say a lot. That was her response to that. Because black bitches and black people in whole, idiots, they don't have an answer for your question. They just have a bunch of deflection and shit talk. And that's why we'll never get anywhere. And that's why we always going to stay in the same fucked up position, because we're not trying to change. We just don't like people calling out our shit.